The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Thousands of alien delegates from across the galaxy sat in their floating seats, their various forms casting strange shadows under the artificial lights. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others breathed different gases through special masks, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystalline shells. Ambassador Tae-ho walked slowly down the central aisle. His human form looked small and fragile compared to the towering aliens around him. Many delegates had never seen a human before. Some whispered that humans were just a myth, a story told to young aliens about a species that had vanished long. The chamber fell silent as Tae-ho reached the center platform. His dark eyes scanned the crowd, and when he spoke, his voice was calm but carried across the enormous space without any amplification. Honored delegates, I bring news from the Mayor. Sol System. The reports you have been receiving are true. Humanity is not extinct. We never were. A wave of shocked sounds rippled through the assembly. The Zephyrian delegate's forearms trembled as she accessed her datapad. The massive Gorvac representative's stone-like skin changed color from gray to deep red. Even the energy beings flickered, with what seemed like surprise. Impossible, growled Ambassador Krell from the Vexthari Empire. His scarred face twisted into a sneer. We have monitored that dead world for centuries. No signals, no ships, no signs of advanced life. Only primitives throwing rocks at each other. Tae-ho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That was the point. High above the chamber, on a hidden observation deck, Commander Hee-jin watched the proceedings through reinforced transparent metal. Her fingers moved across a control panel, and holographic displays showed her what was happening throughout the galaxy. The Vexthari war fleets were moving toward Earth, confident in their superior numbers and technology. They had no idea what waited for them. How long before they reach our system? She asked her aide, a young human named Min-Su. 18 hours, Commander. Their scouts should encounter our outer defenses in 6. Hee-jin nodded. After 10,000 years of hiding, humanity was about to reveal itself, but not in the way the galaxy expected. Back in the council chamber, the Vexithari delegate was on his feet, his voice booming. Even if humans still exist, they are nothing. Primitive cave dwellers with simple weapons. My empire's fleets will claim their world within days. Your fleets are already dead, Tae-ho said quietly. They just don't know it yet. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some delegates demanded proof. Others called for Tae-ho to be arrested for making threats. The energy beings pulsed with agitation, and several smaller species huddled together in fear. Through all the chaos, Tae-ho stood perfectly still. He reached into his simple gray robe and pulled out a small device no larger than his palm. The device looked like polished black stone, but strange patterns of light moved beneath its surface. This is a quantum communicator, he said, his voice somehow cutting through all the noise. It connects to every human settlement, every ship, every defensive platform in our space. Would you like to see what your scouts are finding right now? Chamber fell silent again. Even the energy beings stopped flickering. Tae-ho touched the device and the air above the center platform shimmered. A three-dimensional image appeared, showing space near Earth's moon. At first it looked empty except for stars and the pale surface of Luna below. Then something changed. Massive structures began to appear out of nowhere, as if they were stepping out of invisible doorways. The structures were not built like any ships the galaxy had seen. They looked grown rather than constructed, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Some were the size of small moons. The Vexithari scouts appeared on the display, their ships tiny compared to the human constructs. The alien vessels fired their plasma cannons, weapons that could crack planets. The energy beams struck the human structures and simply vanished, absorbed as if they had never existed. One of the human constructs turned toward the scout ships. Something that looked like liquid light poured from its surface. When the light touched the first Vexithari vessel, the ship didn't explode or burn, it simply stopped being there. One moment it existed, the next moment there was only empty space, as if the ship had never been built. The remaining scouts tried to flee, but space itself seemed to bend around them. They found themselves flying in circles, unable to escape. a gravity well that shouldn't exist. More human structures appeared, surrounding the trapped ships like predators circling prey. The hologram disappeared, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. "Your empire sent 12,000 ships toward Earth," Tejo said to the Vexthari delegate. "In 6 hours, none of them will exist. Not destroyed, not captured, simply gone." He put the communicator back in his robes. "Humanity withdrew from the galaxy 10 millennia ago, not because we were weak, but because we were becoming too strong. We needed time to learn control, to prepare for what was coming." The human ambassador turned to address the entire assembly. "The galaxy is about to change. The question is whether you will adapt to that change or be swept away by it." As Tejo walked back down the aisle toward the exit, every delegate in the chamber watched him go. None of them spoke. They all understood that the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted forever. Above them, Commander Hyejin smiled as she watched the human fleet decloak around Earth. After 10,000 years of hiding, humanity was ready to take its place among the stars again. But this time, they would not be conquered. Admiral Vexkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Blood of Conquest. Through the viewing ports, he could see his invasion fleet stretching across space like a deadly constellation. 12,000 ships of war, each one capable of destroying cities. The largest armada the Vexthari Empire had ever assembled. "Sir, we are approaching the human system," reported his second-in-command, Captain Thulmar. "Our scouts report no resistance. The outer planets appear completely defenseless." Vexkar's scarred face twisted into a cruel smile. His species had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. Humans would be number 48. "Excellent. Begin the attack pattern. I want every human settlement reduced to ash within the hour." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's orbit, expecting to find primitive satellites and simple space stations. Instead, they found empty space. No orbital defenses, no military ships, nothing but the blue-green planet slowly turning below them. "This is too easy," muttered Thulmar. "Where are their defenses?" Before Vexkar could answer, space itself began to change around them. The first human ship didn't appear so much as unfold from reality. One moment there was nothing, the next moment a vessel unlike anything in the galaxy hung before them. It was not built from metal and composite materials like normal ships. Instead, it seemed grown, like a living thing. Its hull rippled and shifted, sometimes solid, sometimes transparent, sometimes not there at all. "What in the void is that thing?" whispered the weapons officer. Captain Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the human vessel Harmony's Edge, watching the Vexithari fleet through sensors that could see across multiple dimensions. Her crew was small, only 12 people, but each one was trained in technologies the galaxy had forgotten. "Scan complete, Captain," reported her tactical officer, Young-ho. 12,000 enemy vessels. Standard plasma weapons, kinetic shields, fusion drives. Very primitive. Jiwoo felt a moment of sadness. These aliens had no idea what they were facing. "Open a communication channel to their flagship." Vexkar's viewing screen flickered to life, showing a human female with calm, dark eyes. She looked young, almost fragile compared to his battle-scarred warriors. "I am Captain Jiwoo of the Human Defense Force," she said in perfect Vexthari language. "You have entered our space with weapons armed and hostile intent. I offer you one chance to withdraw peacefully." The Admiral laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. "One ship against 12,000? You must be insane, human. Surrender now and I might let some of your people live as slaves." Jiwoo's expression didn't change. "I was hoping you would choose differently. Tactical, demonstrate our capabilities. Minimum force." On the Harmony's Edge, Young-ho touched a control that looked like flowing water. The ship's primary weapon charged, drawing power from the quantum vacuum itself. It didn't fire energy beams or projectiles. Instead, it reached out and gently touched the fabric of spacetime around one of the Vexthari destroyers. The alien ship didn't explode. It didn't burn or break apart. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, complete with 800 crew members. The next moment there was only empty space. Not even debris remained. Silence filled both bridges as the implications sank in. How did you do that? Vexcar demanded, his voice no longer confident. We asked reality to forget your ship ever existed, Jiwoo replied calmly. It was happy to comply. More human vessels began to appear around the Vexthari fleet. Some phased in and out of visible space, existing in multiple dimensions at once. Others seemed to be made of crystallized light, their hulls singing with frequencies that made the alien ship's metal hulls vibrate in harmony. Sir, our sensors can't lock onto them, reported the Vexthari weapons officer, panic creeping into his voice. They're registering as being in 17 different locations simultaneously. Fire everything, Vexcar roared. Destroy them all. The alien fleet opened fire with every weapon they had. Plasma beams that could melt asteroids, particle cannons that could punch through planetary shields, and fusion missiles that burned like miniature suns filled the space between the fleets. None of it mattered. The human ships absorbed the energy, attacks like sponges soaking up water. The physical projectiles passed right through them as if they weren't there. When the barrage ended, the human fleet hung in space, completely undamaged. Our turn, said Jiwoo softly. The human ships didn't fire weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, they began to sing. The sound somehow traveled through the vacuum of space, a harmony that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of matter itself. Where the song touched the Vexthari vessels, metal began to flow like liquid. Weapons turned into flowers of folded steel. Shield generators became abstract sculptures of fused components. My ship is turning into art, whispered one Vexthari captain over the communication network, before his vessel transformed into a beautiful spiral of crystallized metal. His crew safely teleported to nearby ships. Within minutes, half the invasion fleet had been converted into harmless but stunning works of space-based sculpture. The remaining ships tried to flee, but found that space around them had become thick, like flying through honey. Please stop, Vexcar begged, his pride completely broken. We surrender. We'll leave your space and never return. Jiwoo considered this for a moment. Very well. But first, you will deliver a message to every government in the galaxy. Humanity has returned and we are no longer hiding. Any who come in peace will be welcomed. Any who come with weapons will learn why we spent 10,000 years in isolation. She gestured, and suddenly the surviving Vexthari ships found themselves free to move again. But as they fled toward the edge of the system, each vessel carried an additional passenger, a small human probe that would ensure they delivered their message exactly as instructed. As the last alien ship disappeared into hyperspace, Jiwoo allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy was about to receive a wake-up call it would never forget. The ancient arsenal was awakening, and this was only the beginning. Dr. Minho's 6 arms moved quickly across the glowing data crystals that filled the archive chamber. The Velthran historian had spent most of his long life studying dead civilizations, but the recent human emergence had changed everything. Now he needed answers that might not exist. The Galactic Archive on Nexus Prime contained the collected knowledge of 3 million years of galactic history. Every species, every war, every discovery was recorded in the crystalline memory banks that stretched for kilometers beneath the planet's surface. If the truth about humanity existed anywhere, it would be here. Dr. Minho called his assistant, Su Jin, a young human who had arrived just days ago as part of the new cultural exchange program. I've found something strange in the oldest sections. Minho scuttled over on his multiple legs, his compound eyes focusing on the data crystal Su Jin held. The information inside was ancient, encoded in a format so old that the translation systems struggled to make sense of it. This dates back almost 12,000 years, Su Jin said, her voice excited. But look at what it says about my people. The holographic display showed fragments of text in dozens of ancient languages. Most of it was corrupted, but enough remained to paint a disturbing picture. According to these records, humans hadn't been primitive when they first contacted the galaxy. They had been something else entirely. The makers of impossible things, Minho read aloud, his translator struggling with the archaic terms. Those who bend reality to their will. This can't be right. Your species was barely using metal tools when they withdrew from galactic society. Sujin shook her head. That's what everyone believes. But what if we're wrong? They dove deeper, into the archives, accessing memory crystals that hadn't been opened in millennia. What they found challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about human history. The oldest records described humans as the galaxy's greatest weaponsmiths and reality engineers. They had created devices that could manipulate the fundamental forces of creation itself. Mathematical formulas that could unravel stars. Machines that turned thought into physical matter. Technologies so advanced that they seemed like magic to other species. Listen to this, Sujin said, translating an ancient war report. The human ship appeared in 3 dimensions simultaneously while existing in 7 others. When our fleet fired upon it, our weapons struck their own reflections and destroyed half our forces. The humans responded by asking our ammunition to return to its component atoms. It complied willingly. Minho's breathing apparatus whistled in amazement. These sound like fairy tales, not historical records. Maybe to us, Sujin replied. But what if they're not? What if this is what humans were really capable of? They found more fragments scattered throughout the archives, references to the final theorem, a mathematical proof that could transform matter into pure destruction. Mentions of human engineers who could build structures that existed outside of normal time and space. Reports of human diplomats who could convince enemy fleets to surrender by showing them the mathematical beauty of peace. But the most disturbing discovery came in a sealed section marked with warning symbols from dozens of different species. Inside they found humanity's own records, written in Earth's oldest languages and translated into galactic standard. We have become too dangerous. Minho read from the human archives. Our children play with forces that could unmake entire star systems. Our scientists create new realities as easily as other species create tools. We must withdraw before we accidentally destroy everything we seek to protect. The final entry in the human section made both researchers sit in stunned silence. We go into the dark so that light may survive what comes after. The galaxy is not ready for what we have become, and we are not ready for what approaches from beyond the galactic rim. We will return when both truths change. Until then, we must perfect our art in solitude, becoming the guardians that reality will need when the true enemy reveals itself. Sujin looked at the date stamp on the entry. This was written exactly 10,003 years ago, just before humanity's withdrawal from galactic society. What did they mean by what approaches from beyond the galactic rim? Minho asked. Before Sujin could answer, alarms began, sounding throughout the archive facility. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red, and the voice of the facility director echoed from speakers embedded in the walls. All researchers report to evacuation stations immediately. We are receiving reports of massive military mobilization across 17 sectors. Multiple species are declaring war on humanity simultaneously. Minho and Sujin looked at each other with growing horror. They don't understand, Sujin whispered. The galaxy thinks humanity is trying to conquer them. But according to these records, Minho said, gesturing at the ancient data crystals around them, your people withdrew specifically to avoid becoming conquerors. They isolated themselves to protect the galaxy from their own power. Through the EO archive's transparent ceiling, they could see ships launching from the planet's surface. Military vessels from a dozen different species, all heading toward human space with weapons armed and hostile intentions. We have to warn them, Sujin said, standing up quickly. Both sides. Humanity needs to know what's coming, and the galaxy needs to understand what they're really facing. But even as she spoke, both researchers knew it might already be too late. The galaxy's greatest powers were mobilizing against an enemy they didn't understand, armed with weapons that couldn't hope to match humanity's ancient arsenal. The truth was buried in these archives. Humanity hadn't developed their impossible technologies to conquer. They had developed them to protect against something far worse than any galactic war. And if the galaxy destroyed itself fighting against its only guardians, nothing would be left to face the real threat when it finally arrived from the darkness. Between the stars. Minho's compound eyes reflected the emergency lights as he watched the last of the evacuation ships disappear into hyperspace. "What have we done?" he whispered. In the depths of the archives, ancient warnings glowed softly in the darkness, their message clear to anyone who cared to read them. Humanity's withdrawal had never been exile. It had been preparation for a war that hadn't started, yet. The Kethmari hegemony had ruled the eastern spiral arm for 3,000 years. Their military doctrine was simple: overwhelming force applied without mercy. When news reached their capital world that humans had defeated the Vexthari Empire, the hegemony's leaders decided to demonstrate why they were the galaxy's dominant power. Admiral So Young watched from the bridge of her command ship as the largest armada in galactic history dropped out of hyperspace. 1 million vessels, from massive planet-killer dreadnoughts to swift attack fighters, filled the space around Earth's solar system like a metal storm cloud. The Kethmari had brought enough firepower to crack worlds. "Impressive," she said calmly to her tactical officer Yamin. "They've committed their entire military to this attack." "Should we be concerned, Admiral?" Jamin asked. He was young, only recently assigned to the Human Defense Fleet, and had never seen combat on this scale. So Young smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "No. We should be sad." The Kethmari fleet arranged itself in a perfect sphere around the solar system, weapons trained on every human world. Their flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Dominion, moved to the center of the formation. Its captain, a battle-scarred Kethmari named Velthuron, opened a communication channel. "Humans of Earth," his voice boomed across all frequencies. "You have impressed the galaxy with your tricks and illusions, but now you face the true power of the Kethmari hegemony. Surrender immediately or watch your worlds burn." So Young accepted the communication request. On screens throughout the enemy fleet, her image appeared. A middle-aged human woman in a simple gray uniform, standing calmly on a bridge that looked more like a garden than a military command center. "I am Admiral So Young of the Human Defense Force," she said. "Captain Velthuron, you have made a serious mistake. This is your only warning. Withdraw your forces now or accept the consequences." Velthuron's laughter was harsh and filled with contempt. "One human ship against 1 million Kethmari vessels? Your arrogance will be your doom, human." "One ship?" So Young looked genuinely puzzled. Who said anything about one ship? Around the Kethmari fleet, reality began to change. First, the stars started to dim. Not just the distant ones, but all of them, as if something was slowly draining the light from the universe itself. The Kethmari sensor operators watched in growing alarm as their instruments detected massive energy draws from nearby stellar bodies. "Sir," whispered the Eternal Dominion science officer, "something is siphoning power directly from the local star. The energy readings are impossible." Velthuron was about to respond when space around his fleet began to fold. Human ships didn't appear in the conventional sense. Instead, they emerged from dimensions that shouldn't exist, sliding into reality like thoughts becoming solid. Some vessels existed in multiple time streams simultaneously, so that enemy sensors detected them attacking from positions they hadn't reached yet. Others phased between solid matter and pure energy, making them impossible to target. But the most terrifying aspect wasn't the ships themselves. It was their restraint. The first Kethmari battle group to fire found their weapons simply refusing to work. Plasma cannons turned into sculptures of crystallized energy. Missile launchers began, growing flowers made of compressed starlight. The weapons didn't explode or malfunction. They transformed into something beautiful and harmless. "What's happening to our guns?" demanded Velthuron. A human voice answered from the communication system, though no channel had been opened. "We asked them to become something more peaceful." They agreed. The second battle group tried a different approach, launching fighter craft to engage the human vessels directly. The small ships raced toward their targets at maximum speed, only to find themselves flying in perfect formation with the enemy they were supposed to attack. The human ships had somehow convinced the Kethmari fighters that they were part of the same fleet. "This is impossible," muttered the Kethmari fleet commander. Our pilots are reporting that their ships won't respond to hostile commands. They say their vessels are too happy to fight. Admiral So Young's voice reached every Kithmari ship simultaneously, speaking in each crew member's native language. We are not your enemies. We don't want to conquer your worlds or enslave your people. But you came here with weapons, and weapons have consequences. The third battle group never had a chance to attack. As they moved into firing position, their ships simply began to fade away. Not destroyed or damaged, but gradually becoming less real, as if the universe was slowly forgetting they had ever existed. "Help us!" screamed the captain of the fading flagship. "We're being erased!" "No," So Young replied gently. "You're being moved. Your ships and crews are being relocated to a parallel reality where this battle never happened. You'll be safe there, and eventually you'll forget this ever occurred." Panic spread through the Kethmari fleet as more battle groups found themselves facing impossible phenomena. Some ships discovered their crews aging backwards, becoming children who giggled at the pretty lights outside their viewing ports. Others found themselves trapped in temporal loops, reliving the same moment over and over until they chose to withdraw. But the humans never struck a killing blow. Every action was precise, calculated to disable rather than destroy. When Kethmari ships were neutralized, their crews were safely relocated or rendered harmless. Not a single enemy life was lost. "Why?" Beltheron finally asked, his voice broken by defeat. "Why don't you just destroy us? You clearly have the power." So Young's image appeared on his screen again, and for the first time he could see the sadness in her eyes. "Because destroying you would be easy. Protecting you from what's coming will be much harder." As the surviving Kethmari ships fled toward the galactic rim, carrying stories of humanity's terrible mercy, So Young turned to address her crew. "Send the message to all galactic governments. The demonstration is complete. It's time they learned what we've really been preparing for." In the depths of space, ancient sensors detected movement beyond the galaxy's edge. Something vast and hungry was finally beginning to stir, and humanity's long vigil was about to end. The neutral world of Kestra had never seen so many different species in one place. Delegates from across the galaxy filled the massive assembly hall, their various forms creating a strange tapestry of life. Some breathed different gases, others existed as pure energy, and a few could only survive in specially designed environmental suits. Ambassador Ye Jin walked slowly to the center platform, her simple white robes a stark contrast to the elaborate costumes worn by the other delegates. Behind her, a team of human technicians set up equipment that looked more like art than technology, crystalline structures that hummed with barely contained energy. The hall fell silent as she began to speak. "Honored delegates, you have seen what humanity can do. You have witnessed our weapons, felt our power, and experienced our restraint. Now you must learn why we developed these capabilities." Elder Counselor Dongmin, an ancient human with kind eyes and silver hair, stepped forward to join her. His presence seemed to calm the nervous energy in the room. Many delegates had heard stories of his wisdom, though few had seen him in person. "What we are about to show you," Dongmin said, his voice carrying easily across the vast chamber, "will change how you see the universe forever. Some knowledge cannot be unknown once learned. Are you prepared for that burden?" The Zephyrian delegate raised one of her forearms. "We came here for answers. Show us what you're hiding." Yejin nodded to her technicians. The crystalline devices activated, and the air above the assembly shimmered. Reality bent and twisted until a three-dimensional image filled the space above their heads. At first it looked like empty space between galaxies, the vast darkness that separated their home from distant neighbors. But as the image focused, something became visible in that darkness, something that made several delegates gasp in horror. It was massive beyond comprehension. Not a ship or a creature, but something that existed on a scale that dwarfed entire star systems. Its form constantly shifted, sometimes appearing solid, sometimes looking like living shadow, sometimes seeming to be made of the spaces between atoms themselves. "This," Yejin said quietly, is what we call a reality eater. There are thousands of them in the void between galaxies, and they are moving toward us. The image zoomed in, showing the entity consuming what had once been another galaxy. But it wasn't destroying stars or planets in any normal sense. Instead, it was erasing them from existence entirely, making it as if they had never been born. Entire civilizations simply ceased to be, their histories wiped from the fabric of space-time itself. They don't conquer, Dongmin explained as delegates watched in stunned silence. They don't destroy. They consume reality itself, feeding on the very possibility of existence. Every galaxy they touch is not just destroyed, it becomes impossible. The matter, energy, time, and space that formed it returns to the primordial void. A delegate from the Crystalline Collective, her voice shaking with fear, asked, "How long do we have?" "Our deep space sensors detect them crossing the edge of our galactic halo," Yejin replied. "At their current speed, the first entities will reach our outer systems in approximately 50 years. The assembly erupted in panic. Some delegates demanded immediate evacuation to other galaxies. Others called for military mobilization. A few simply sat in shocked silence, overwhelmed by the impossibility of fighting such creatures. Silence. The voice came from an unexpected source. Captain Taeho, the human ambassador who had first revealed humanity's existence to the galaxy. He had been standing quietly at the edge of the platform, but now he stepped forward with authority that surprised everyone. "Running will not save you," he said firmly. "These entities have consumed 17 galaxies in the past million years. There is nowhere to flee that they will not eventually reach. Then we're all doomed," whispered the Gorvak representative, his stone-like skin turning pale with fear. "Not if you accept our protection," Yejin said. The holographic display changed, showing human ships engaging one of the reality eaters. The battle looked impossible. Tiny vessels fighting something the size of a solar system. But somehow, the human weapons were working. "Our ancestors encountered these entities once before, long ago," Dongmin explained. "That first contact taught us that conventional physics cannot touch them. Only weapons that operate outside normal reality have any effect. That is why we spent 10,000 years in isolation, not to hide from you, but to develop the tools necessary to fight them." The display showed human vessels using impossible technologies, weapons that fired concentrated mathematics, shields made of crystallized time, engines that ran on the energy difference between existing and not existing. Against any normal enemy, such tools would be beyond overkill. Against the reality eaters, they were barely adequate. "The choice before you is simple," Yejin continued. "Accept humanity as the galaxy's guardians, knowing that we possess power that could unmake reality itself, or face these entities alone, with conventional weapons that cannot even touch them." The Velthran historian who had uncovered the truth about humanity's past stood up slowly. "If we accept your guardianship," he asked, "what guarantee do we have that you won't use your power against us?" Dongmin smiled sadly. "None. You must trust that beings capable of rewriting the laws of physics will choose to use that power responsibly. It is not a comfortable position for either of us. But consider the alternative," Taeho added. "In 50 years, when the reality eaters arrive, would you rather face them with allies who have impossible weapons, or face them alone with guns that fire ordinary matter at ordinary speeds?" The vote, when it came, was not unanimous. Some species chose to withdraw from the galaxy entirely, hoping to find safety in distant regions of space. Others voted to fight the entities using conventional means, refusing to accept human protection. But the majority signed the new Galactic Compact, formally recognizing humanity as the galaxy's defenders against threats beyond normal comprehension. As Yejin placed her signature on the document, she felt the full weight of her species' destiny settle on her shoulders. They had become the guardians of reality itself, wielding power that could preserve or destroy everything they had sworn to protect. In 50 years, they would discover if that burden was too great to bear. The galaxy was no longer unprepared. Whether it could survive what was coming remained the greatest question in the universe.